The parish church of Leland is curiously situated amidst hills of brown sand, near the entrance of the Creek of Hale. The sandy waste around the church is called Towen, and this place was long the scene of the midnight gambols of the small people. In the adjoining village, or, as it was called in Cornwall, the church town, lived an old woman who had been, according to her own statement, a frequent witness to the use made by the fairies of the Towen. Her husband also had seen some extraordinary scenes on the same spot. From her to me, after repeated description, I get the following tale. It was the fishing season, and Richard had been to St. Ives for some fish. He was returning laden with pilchards on a beautiful moonlit night, and as he ascended the hill from St. Ives, he thought he heard the bell of Leland Church tolling. Upon a nearer approach, he saw lights in the church, and most distinctively did the bell toll, not with its usual clear sound, but dull and heavy, as if it had been muffled, scarcely awakening any echo. Richard walked towards the church, and cautiously, but not without Lee, approaching one of the windows, and looked in. At first he could not perceive anyone within, nor discover whence the light came by which everything was so distinctly illuminated. At length he saw, moving along the central aisle, a funeral procession. The little people who crowded the aisle, although they all looked sorrowful, were not dressed in any mourning garment. So far from it, they wore wreaths of little roses and carried branches of the blossoming myrtle. Richard beheld the bier borne between 6, whether man or woman he could not tell, but he saw that the face of the corpse was that of a beautiful female, smaller than the smallest child's doll. It was, Richard said, as if it were a dead seraph. So very lovely did it appear to him. The body was covered with white flowers, and its hair, like gold threads, was tangled amongst the blossom. The body was placed within the altar, and then a large pat of men with picks and spades began to dig a little hole close by the sacramental table. Their task being completed, others with great care removed the body and placed it in a hole. The entire company crowded around, eager to catch a parting glimpse of that beautiful corpse, ere yet it was placed in the earth. As was lowered into the ground, they began to tear off their flowers and break their branches of myrtle, crying, "Our queen is dead, our queen is dead." At length, one of the men who had dug the grave threw a shovelful of earth upon the body, and the shriek of the fairy host so alarmed Richard that he involuntarily joined in it. In a moment, all the lights were extinguished, and the fairies were heard flying in great consternation in every direction. Many then brushed past the terrified man, and shrieking pierced him with sharp instruments. He was compelled to save his life by the most rapid flight. Once upon a time, there was, in this celebrated town, a Dame Somebody. I do not know her name. All I with truth can say is that she was old, and nothing the worse for that, for age is, or ought to be, held in honour as the source of wisdom and experience. Now this good old woman lived not in vain, for she had passed her days in the useful capacity of a nurse, and as she approached the term of her going out of this world herself, she was still useful in her generation by helping others into it. She was in fact the sage feminine of the village. One night, about 12 o'clock in the morning, as the good folks say who tell the tale, Dame Somebody had just got comfortably into bed when a rap 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 came on her cottage door with such a loud and bold and continued noise that there was the sound of authority with every individual knock. Startled and alarmed by the call, she arose and soon learnt that the summons was a hasty one to bid her attend on a patient who needed her help. She opened her door when the summoner appeared to be a strange, squint-eyed little ugly old fellow who had the look, as she said, very like a certain dark personage who ought not at all times to be called by his proper name, not at all prepossessed in favour of the errand by the visage of the messenger. She nevertheless could not or dared not resist the command to follow him straight and attend upon his wife. "Thy wife," thought the good dame, "heaven forgive me, but as sure as I live, I be going to the birth of thy little Dive." A large coal-black horse, with eyes like balls of fire, stood at the door. The ill-looking old fellow, without more ado, whisked her up high, pillion in a minute, seated himself before her, and away went the horse and riders, as if sailing through the air rather than trotting on the ground. How Dame Somebody got to the place of her destination she could not tell, but it was a great relief to her fears when she found herself set down at the door of a neat cottage, saw a couple of tidy children, and remarked her patient to be a decent-looking woman, having all things about her fitting the time and the occasion. A fine bouncing babe soon made its appearance, and seemed very bold on its entry into life, for it gave the good dame a box on the ear, as the coaxing and the cajolery of all good old nurses, she declared the little sweet thing to be very like its father. The mother said nothing to this, but gave the nurse a certain ointment with directions that she should strike the child's eyes with it. Now you must know that this word strike in our Devonshire vocabulary does not exactly mean give a blow, but rather what is opposite, to rub, smooth down, or touch gently. The nurse performed her task, though she thought it an odd one, and as it was nothing new that old nurses were generally very cautious, she wondered what it could be for, and thought that, as no doubt it was a good thing, she might just as well try it upon her own eyes as those of the baby. So she made free to strike one of them by way of trial, when, O ye powers of fairyland, what a change was there! The neat but homely cottage and all who were in it seemed all of a sudden to undergo a mighty transformation, some for the better, some for the worse. The new-made mother appeared as a beautiful lady, attired in white. The babe was seen wrapped in swaddling clothes and a silvery gaze. It looked much prettier than before, but it still maintained the elfish cast of its eyes, like the redoubted father, whilst 2 or 3 children more had undergone a metamorphosis as uncouth as that recorded by Ovid when the Circapalians were transformed into apes, for there sat on either side of the bed's head a couple of little flat-nosed imps, who, with mops and mows, and with many a grimace and grin, were busied to no end in scratching their own palms, or in pulling the fairy lady's ears with their long and hairy paws. The dame, who beheld all this, fearing she knew not what in the house of enchantment, got away as fast as she could without saying one word about striking her own eye with the magic ointment, and what she had beheld in consequence of doing so. The sour-looking old fellow once more handed her up on the coal-black horse and sent her home in a whipper-sisser. Now, what a whipper-sisser means is more than what I can tell, though I consider myself to be tolerably well acquainted with the tongues of this west country. It may mean, perhaps, whip, says he, in allusion to some gentle intimation being freely given by the rider to the horse's sides with a switch, that he should use the utmost dispatch. Certain it is the old woman returned home much faster than she went, but mark the event. On the next market day, when she sailed forth to sell her eggs, whom should she see but the same wicked-looking old fellow, busied like a rogue as he was, in pilfering sundry articles from stall to stall. Oh, oh, thought the dame, have I caught you, you old thief? But I'll let you see I could set Master Mayor and the 2 town constables on your back, if I chose to be telling. So up she went, and with that bold free sort of air which persons who have learnt secrets that ought not to be known are apt to assume when they address any great rogue hitherto considered as a superior, she inquired carelessly after his wife and child, and hoped both were as well as could be expected. "What I?" exclaimed the old pixie thief. "Do you see me today?" "See you? To be sure I do, as plain as I see the sun in the skies, and I see you are busy into the bargain." "Do you so?" he cried. "Pray, with which eye do you see all this?" "With the right eye, to be sure." The ointment," exclaimed the old fellow. "Take that for meddling with what did not belong to you. You shall see me no more." He struck her eye as he spoke, and from that hour till the day of her death, she was blind on the right side, thus duly paying for having gratified an idle curiosity in the house of a pixie.